Mishnah 18. Let me put it on the board for everyone. So we were discussing the statement of Rabbi Lazar, who had said that we should be diligent in our Torah study, and part of it is for our own knowledge, but also to be able to respond for those who are challenging. And the second half of the Mishnah says, "Vida lifnei mi ata amel," and you should know before whom you toil. V'ne'eman hu ba'al malachtecha, and the boss, so to speak, the one who's in charge of your work, your employer, is faithful sheyishalem lach sechar pu'ulosecha, to pay you the wages for your work, for your labor. So the da lifnei mi ta'amel, know before who you toil, there's two ways we can look at it. We can look at it as also referring to the apikoros, that when you're having this debate with him, you have to pay attention to who you're talking to. And then the other approach is it's talking about Hashem, that when we are doing things, when we are learning Torah, and when we're engaging in our activities, we should understand, we should pay attention to before whom we toil. So we'll take a look at both of those ideas. So first of all, the Tiferes Yisrael starts off. He had divided his Mishnah into three parts to say that there were three different things one should bring to the table when they're studying Torah. So one of them was in terms of the diligence. We talked about reviewing, right? And the second one, which you also mentioned yesterday, which was that you have to be able to understand it, not just in depth in order to be able to respond. So you have to go into it in depth, not just by memory and rote. And the third component is to be successful in your learning was that you should understand you have to get rid of your outside worries. Like, it's very difficult to concentrate on something when you're anxious about other things, right? When we have other things on our mind, we can't concentrate properly. And so certainly one other thing on our mind would be if we have financial concerns, right? That's one of the things. Sometimes it'd be health concerns, other things. So we want to be able to try to leave those behind and not be worried about them. And therefore, that's one aspect. Another aspect is that just in general, not to think about other things. When we're studying Torah or when we're davening, right, we're talking to God. So if you have other things on your mind, it's kind of not very nice. So imagine that you are going in front of someone, whoever it might be, an important individual, and your mind is not there, right? And you're totally concentrating on something else. It doesn't really work well in that conversation. So certainly when we're speaking before Hashem, and He knows what you're thinking, how much more so it would be, and not only is it not nice, but it's also embarrassing for you. Hashem knows what you're doing. He knows what you're thinking. The other point it brings down here is the idea of the reward. And we know that we had earlier said in one of the earliest Mishnahs in the first chapter was that ideally we should be working as servants to make our master happy, but not for the sake of the reward. Yet here it's reminding us about the reward. And really the idea is that the reward does have an important point in that that may not be the reason why we are doing things for Hashem, but it is certainly a motivating factor. That if we want to be able to combat the Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination, so one of the ways that we can do so is by reminding ourselves of the reward that it is awaiting us. And so even though it's not the goal, but it still is a strategy. Rabbeinu Yonah also works out an idea he has that between toiling before Hashem, in that when we are doing things, whatever we might be doing, sometimes could be with davening, we're doing another mitzvah, could be even when we're engaged in a Torah class. Sometimes we might have either motivations that are not necessarily the idealistic one or the altruistic. We might have ulterior motives for what we do. Or sometimes a person might be doing it for show. In other words, listen, I got to look good. Everybody else is going to view me, and therefore I have to do it. So He says, you know what, don't be deceptive in your service of Hashem and the work that you do before Hashem. Hashem knows what's going on. He knows he knows what your motives are. He knows what you're thinking. So, you know, just don't try to pull a fast one that you think you're fooling everybody else, but you're not fooling Hashem. And also, the idea again is that you're toiling in a sense that you're doing it for Hashem. How could you not work hard? And we do know that there is a reward, and Hashem will definitely reward you. Therefore, it's an incentive to work even harder. And as we said before, it is a method to combat the Yetzer Hara. And then the Rabbeinu Yonah adds is that also really we should be doing things for Hashem just as a matter of gratitude that we owe it because of everything that Hashem provides for us. He's providing us with life. He's providing us with everything. And therefore, we're really automatically obligated to serve him. He doesn't have to pay us anything. And yet he still does. He's telling us that even though he doesn't have to, he's still rewarding us. And that, if we are aware of that fact, that really we should be doing it because we owe it. Yet, and therefore Hashem doesn't, in a sense, owe us anything, yet he's still going to reward us for that, what we're doing. That should increase, if we're able to really internalize that, that will increase our feelings of love for Hashem. That's a system that we can use to increase our Ahavat Hashem, our love of Hashem. Interestingly, the Abarbanel, who lived during the time of the Spanish Inquisition, he has an interpretation which is kind of based on the times, and he understands when it says "before whom you toil." As I mentioned, there was some of the commentaries looked at it as when you're having the disagreement with the heretic, you should be aware of who that person is when you're answering, because you should realize, first of all, not to get sucked in by his whatever he's saying, and therefore understand that you're talking to someone who is a heretic. But the Abarbanel takes it a step further and says, in the time of the Abarbanel and around that time, even earlier, the time of the Ramban, they used to have these debates, right, where they would have a Jewish person would have to defend Judaism to the Christian church. And he says, when you're debating these heretics, he says you have to know who you're dealing with. In other words, who's judging it? Who's judging that debate? Because sometimes if you have a judge who's already decided the answer before the debate started, don't even bother engaging it, because nothing is going to be accomplished. So you have to know, are we talking about someone who's open-minded? Are they, objective, intelligent, etc.? Then you can have the debate, because something could come out of it. But if you're going to go into a debate where the whoever it is, the judge, the royal person of that time has already made up his mind, he's not even listening. So then why are you getting involved? So it says that, and he inserts examples where, of course, that was the case, where they had these major debates where the conclusion was already and before the case even happened, it was already decided, and therefore he tells us, based on his personal experience of what he went through and what the Jewish people of the time were going through, is that you also have to know, when you're having debates with others, like who's on the other side, and are they open-minded? And as I think we said yesterday, there's no point in having a debate with someone who's not going to anyway listen. It just does not accomplish. So it's not worth engaging if the other side is not open-minded at all. If they're willing to listen, have the debate. Okay, we will hold it there. Have a great day, everyone.